What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this Week 13 NFL slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. If you guys have been watching some of my other NBA videos, I've been doing this lineup construction, this lineup building type format, and you guys have seemed to really enjoy it. Just give you my overall thoughts on the slate, cross-compare to some of the ownerships, and give you guys some of my favorite overall plays on the slate, while taking into consideration ownership and sheer upside. And not only that, we have Fantasy Cruncher to help us build our lineups. We have ownership projections, our custom projections inputted to Fantasy Cruncher. And if you guys haven't signed up for Fantasy Cruncher, if you haven't signed up for dgfantasy.com, we're actually a major partner of Fantasy Cruncher. What that means is if you sign up for a $30 monthly membership, you get a $20 voucher to any Fantasy Cruncher product. One of the many benefits you get for being a part of this amazing community. Not only that, included in the partnership, you get a cheat sheet to every single major sport, NBA slates, main slates, the NFL main slate, which is going to start tomorrow, all the showdown slates, all the featured showdown slates, and you have a player pool to choose from. You have my favorite core plays, GPP plays, TJ's favorite GPP plays, core plays, all that good stuff, and we are constantly updating behind the scenes. So all that is included. If you guys are interested in signing up for a membership, head over to our fantasy website at dgfantasy.com. But let's go ahead and start building a lineup. We are going to be going position by position and going over some of my favorite overall plays. And I kind of want to start backwards because some of the more obvious plays are coming from the defense and tight end picture. So I want to get those core plays out of the way so that we can get different with the skilled position players. So let's actually go backwards. Let's start out with the defense here. We're going to be going over one of the more obvious plays on the slate, and that's right here with the Miami Dolphins defense at $3,300. They're going against a Giants team here without Daniel Jones, and they're also projected to score 17 total points here against the Miami defense. So to me, that just looks like the chalk defense. It looks like the most obvious play, pretty much on the entire slate. We'll get to another obvious play here as we go along with these other positions. But the Dolphins at $3,300 look like they're in a smash spot. They could create opportunities, even force a defensive touchdown, and they just have a lot of upside here. They're also showing the highest owned here on the slate. Some other noteworthy options here as we go down the line is going to be the Eagles. They're projected to only let up 19 points here versus the Jets, so I do consider that a really good pivot if you're looking for a pivot off that Dolphins team. But I'm going to start here with the Dolphins defense, and that's pretty straightforward. I don't really need to speak on that too much. Now, switching over to the tight end picture, there's also a very obvious play. I think this is honestly the most obvious play on the entire slate, and they should be the chalkiest option. Mareu is in line to play, pretty much close to all the snaps here at the tight end position for the Las Vegas Raiders without Darren Waller in the lineup. As we know, he is doubtful, should not play here in this matchup versus the Washington football team, and that's also a very good matchup. The Washington football team ranks 27th amongst all tight ends here historically on the season. And then we're also going to be taking a look here at some other pay-up options. One guy that does stand out to me here is going to be George Kittle at $5,900. I do like him for GPPs as a nice pivot here, and the tight end position looks to be a nice spot to pay up for because it's going to create some very awkward builds. Another good pay-up option that I am really high on is going to be Gronk at $5,300. He has just been crushing it as of late. Obviously established that chemistry back here with Tom Brady. Got 9 total targets last game, and if I'm looking at the wide receiver picture here for the Tampa Bay Bucks, I'm looking directly towards Gronk just because of the value perspective. At $5,300, you're getting 9 targets out of a wide receiver / tight end. That's better than Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. So honestly, a double tight end build would not upset me here. I'm not personally going to start out my build with Gronk and Mareu just because I like the upside here with some of these other wide receivers and running backs, but I would definitely not hate you if you went to Gronk as a secondary option over Mareu. And now let's actually take a look at some other GPP options that I went ahead and tagged. Dallas Goedert here against the Jets has just been not getting the target share that we're used to seeing from him, especially since Zach Ertz left that team. We've only been seeing 3, 8, 2, 6 targets, but we look for a bounce back game here against a very bad Jets defense. They ranked 24th against opposing tight ends here going through the rest of the season. So I do like him at a discounted price tag here at $4,500. We already talked about George Kittle and then Kyle Pitts. The one way you're going to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks is through the air. I do like him at $5,600. I definitely don't like him as much as Gronk, and I do think that Mareu is going to be the chalkiest option here on the entire slate, especially since he saves a ton of salary. Now let's flip over to the very front side of the slate here. Let's go ahead and jump over to the quarterback. So now that we have Mareu and the Dolphins, we have a nice core here, and they're obvious spend down options in my opinion. So that creates a lot of flexibility for the rest of my lineup. Let's see what we can do here. Going through some of these quarterback options, the most obvious or the highest price player here on the slate is going to be Lamar Jackson. We know that he has a ton of rushing upside. Stafford does not. Kyler Murray does, $7,500. We don't know technically if he's going in the play yet. He is probable. He's questionable, teetering on that probable side. But I just don't like the rushing upside in terms of the matchup here versus Chicago Bears. They just play at such a low pace. So for me, I'm looking for high upside players and great matchups, and honestly, if the game should be relatively competitive, those are the type of games I'm looking to target. So like for instance, when I'm condensing my player pool here, I'm looking at the quarterback position, and I'm looking at all the close over-unders and the higher ones at that. So the one game that sticks out to me here is going to be Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow at a 50 over-under. Cincinnati's only favored by 3 points at home, so that should be a duel. They're obviously going to prove who's the better sophomore quarterback in that matchup. Right now, I do prefer Burrow at lower ownership. I think Justin Herbert's showing the third highest here on the slate at $6,700. So that's one thing to consider. If you're looking for a direct pivot, I definitely don't mind Joe Burrow. So like those are going to be the quarterbacks I'm looking to target here. So like one guy I'm really not high on is going to be Matthew Stafford, just because I think he definitely does lack the upside. He is a safer option, especially for cash, but that's not what I'm going after. I'm going up for higher upside here. Again, the Jaguars are favored to lose away here by 13 points. And if Matthew Stafford doesn't have to throw for a majority of the game, then why would that increase his upside? So at $7,300, he's going to fall by the wayside. I do prefer Tom Brady over Matthew Stafford. And then Justin Herbert here at $6,700. I think I'm personally going to lock him in, or Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, again, is projected to win this game. So you can only expect that Justin Herbert, playing from behind, does have increased upside. So as of right now, if I'm locking in a player from the quarterback position, I'm definitely going to be going towards Justin Herbert here at $6,700 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Not only that, he saves me some salary, a $500 difference off the very chalky Tom Brady at $7,200, which I don't hate. If Atlanta can keep it within 10 points, then I still like the upside here on Tom Brady. I just think that has a lot more blowout potential than this Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow duel. Some other really good options here. Derek Carr is going to be showing lower ownership, and obviously one of the best matchups here on the slate. Washington football team ranks 32nd against opposing quarterbacks, and you're getting a very good discounted 6K. He's very volatile. That's the one thing I don't like about Derek Carr. 24, 10, 19, 13 points, 23, 24. He's all over the place. 8 the week before that. So I don't like the consistency or the inconsistency here from Derek Carr, even though he isn't a very good matchup. I do like him for GBPs. Kirk Cousins always gets disrespected. He's still a very safe play, at least if you look at his fantasy points. Has been averaging 21.1 points here on the season. That's pretty good for a $6,500 price tag. It's just a matter of whether Detroit can keep up and they can keep this game close. And Minnesota is favored by 7 points, so I do expect it to be. I just definitely like the shootout potential here a lot more with the Chargers and Cincinnati. Taylor Heineke in that same game there versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Definitely don't mind that at $5,600. That could easily become a shootout. Right now, the over-unders at a 49.5, and Las Vegas is only favored by 1 single point. So I actually like that just as much in terms of upside as the Cincinnati and Chargers game. I just think that, given the situation here with the Chargers, they're a very safe team. And in terms of passing, Justin Herbert has shown over the past couple weeks that he can be very consistent. 24, 38 points, 34. He has a huge ceiling, and that's something I'm looking for, especially if I'm playing one single lineup. And then one last guy, this is definitely more of a dart throw, is going to be Matt Ryan at $5,600. The one thing I love about him is that he's only $5,600, one of the cheaper guys on the slate, and he's virtually showing no ownership. Like I said earlier on in the video, the one way to beat the Bucs is to beat them through the air, and if Matt Ryan can keep it somewhat competitive, then I do like his upside there, especially at that price tag. Now let's switch over to the running back position. Here at the very top is going to be Jonathan Taylor, and what's not to like here about Jonathan Taylor at $9,200? He's been very, very consistent, the best running back and an MVP candidate at this rate. Only got 16 attempts last game versus Tampa Bay Bucks, and still dropped 19.7 points because of that touchdown that he had. And that was the best rushing defense in the entire league, and he's putting up 19.7 points. So in this matchup here versus the Houston Texans, you got to think they're going to start out with the lead. They're going to have that lead for the majority of the game, and it just screams like the safest option on the entire slate by far. So the one question that we're going to ask ourselves here for pay-up options is it going to be Jonathan Taylor or Cooper Kupp? And as much as I like Cooper Kupp, I think that game could get out of hand, and they won't need him as much as they're going to need Jonathan Taylor here, because they should control this offense. They should control this game, the majority of the game. I love Jonathan Taylor here at $9,200 because of the game script alone. If we keep going down here, Austin Eckler, what a fantastic matchup here versus Cincinnati Bengals for all the reasons that I do like Justin Herbert. So $8,300, I don't think a lot of people are going to be landing on him because that is a little bit more than what we're used to seeing there from Austin Eckler. Did get the price increase, but love the matchup. I think he has just as much upside as Jonathan Taylor if this game does stay competitive. But I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be the more obvious choice if people are looking up in that pay-up option range. which makes Joe Mixon an even better GPP play. They're going to be staying in the same game, and Joe Mixon has been getting a ton of volume, both in terms of receiving and in terms of rushing, so I could definitely see a potential game stack there. But let's start going all the way down to some of these pay-down options, because that's where I think some of these options stand out a little bit more. And one guy I'm talking about is going to be Antonio Gibson, who has been dealing with that shin injury, but did get 29 attempts last game. This was Monday night versus Seattle. He's put those rumors to bed. $5,700 if he's going to get 20-plus carries consistently in a very good matchup, a very high over-under here versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to be locking him in. I think Antonio Gibson, even though he's showing the highest owned, I think, on the entire slate as of right now, I think he's one of the more obvious plays. He's not showing as high. Oh, no, he is. He's showing higher than Jonathan Taylor. So two guys we've already talked about here with Antonio Gibson and Jonathan Taylor. And then another guy that presents a decent amount of upside is going to be Jamal Williams, who's stepping into the starting role here for DeAndre Swift at $5,400. I think that is a fantastic discount. We're going to expect a ton of volume here from Jamal Williams. Whenever DeAndre Swift is out of the lineup, he gets a ton of catches and has a ton of PPR upside. So last game when DeAndre Swift did leave, and he did leave in the first quarter, he ended up getting 15 attempts and 5 targets. That's more than enough to cover the price tag of $5,400, and does have a good matchup here versus the Minnesota Vikings. So I actually like him as another very cheap paydown option. I think those are the two more obvious paydown options here at the running back position, which leaves me to believe that Jonathan Taylor really might not be as chalky as we would expect. So Jonathan Taylor at $9,200, definitely don't mind him as a flex spot, but I don't know if I'm going to be prioritizing Jonathan Taylor over Antonio Gibson or Jamal Williams, just because of the amount of value that they do present. So that's one thing to consider here. It's going to come down to a very interesting build. I would not mind putting him at the flex position. We can actually go ahead and do that now. I just don't want to give you guys my entire lineup, but I do think that is a good direction that you can go. And then last but not least, we do have the wide receiver position. And like I said earlier when we were talking about Jonathan Taylor, the question is going to be, are you going to be paying up for Cooper Kupp or JT? And the one thing I have to say about this game here versus the Rams, and again, I am a Jags fan, so this is very sad to say, is I don't think the Jags are going to be able to keep this close enough to warrant a ton of targets from Cooper Kupp. That being said, he could run away with his 2-touchdown game already, by the third quarter. So he still has a ton of upside, especially if the Jaguars do keep this close. So that's one thing to consider. I don't think he has as much upside given the game script as Jonathan Taylor, but I definitely don't mind him as a last piece. So wouldn't hate you if you put Cooper Kupp into your lineup. I'm just not going to lock him in as of right now. But let's go ahead and start to look at this lineup, or at these wide receivers in terms of the ownership. Keenan Allen showing the next highest owned here at 16.6%. Personally, I'm all over Keenan Allen, especially if I have Justin Herbert, because you want that 1-2 punch. And I think that's where a majority of these targets are going to go. I'm going to go ahead and put him into my lineup here. Keenan Allen, $7,500, has just been a target monster as of late. Got 10 targets, 13, 11, 13, 11. He's getting double-digit targets pretty much every single game. So that's one thing you love to see here from Keenan Allen, especially in the game script that does favor him potentially being in another shootout. So Keenan Allen, one of the more obvious plays, in my opinion, here on the slate. Chris Godwin is another guy that should be getting a ton of ownership because of the price drop, mainly at $6,600. He did have a floor game last game, only got 5.7 points, still got 5 targets, which isn't bad. It's just that whenever Gronk's in that lineup, obviously, they have a lot more to throw the ball around to there with Tom Brady and all of his other weapons, especially with Fournette emerging as a good PPR running back. Chris Godwin, Hunter Renfrow is another fantastic option here at $5,800. There's just a ton of mid-range wide receivers that I really don't know who I'm going to lock in at this point. I think they're all phenomenal. Like Hunter Renfrow at $5,800 is looking like the wide receiver one in that offense, at least going through the second half of the season, especially without Ruggs here in the lineup. So I definitely like him at $5,800. And then Devontae Parker is the one guy that we have to keep an eye on because he technically has been activated off IR. Don't know what the injury status is going to look like. Don't know if he's going to be limited, because if he's limited at all at $3,900, I still would rather pay up for a guy that I know is going to get consistent targets. So if they come out and say Devontae Parker's playing 100% of snaps as his wide receiver 2 role next to Waddle, I'm going to be all over Devontae Parker at $3,900. And then just keep going down the list here. Michael Pittman, another guy that had a floor game last game, but I would not mind putting him into my lineup. He still got 10 targets last game. So you got to love to see the volume from him. Deontay Johnson, who's emerging as one of the better wide receivers in the NFL at this point in terms of volume. 14, 13, 13 targets back to back to back. Pretty much up there with Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp. So another guy that I could throw into my lineup. And then Jalen Waddle has the most routes run in the entire NFL. So all of these guys are such good mid-range options. I could see landing on any one of these guys, and for that reason, this is going to be my core as of right now. Really liking those options that I just talked about, and you could make a stance for any one of these guys at this point. T. Higgins at $5,800. I mean, honestly, if you're going to start Keenan Allen, might as well come back with T. Higgins in that exact same game, especially if you think it's going to be a blowout. Still getting consistent targets, obviously a deep ball threat and touchdown threat every single week. And then we can start to talk about some of these other options that won't be owned, like Jamar Chase at $7,000 has had a couple floor games, but since he's come down the price tag, why not take a stab at him? Especially if you're starting Keenan Allen, that is just a fantastic type of shootout game there with a lot of upside and a lot of potential, especially at the price tags. They're just not that expensive. So you guys already know what I'm about to say. If you guys are trying to get different, please avoid the Cincinnati Bengals and Chargers game. A couple other guys that I have to talk about here. Brandon Ayuk without Deebo Samuel, $5,600. Another guy that's just not guaranteed targets as much as these other mid-range options, but I could easily see him having a ceiling game, especially against a Seattle Seahawks defense. And Terry McLaurin in another very high over-under. If you're going to be playing Taylor Heineke, come back with Terry McLaurin. They are very cheap, and he's also not showing that high ownership whatsoever. And I think he is a near elite wide receiver as well at 6.4% ownership. So those are my favorite GPP plays, and this is my core as of right now. And again, things can change for tomorrow, and we will be going live before lock. If you guys are interested in showing up for late slate breaking injury news, all of our favorite updated plays, including TJ and Kevin, feel free to show up. We go live around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this content. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course smash that like button for all of our future NFL content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.